Admiral Lim Jae-sung stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the largest fleet ever assembled prepare for battle. Ships from dozens of species filled the space around Earth, but these were not the same vessels that had fled in terror 6 months ago. These ships moved differently now, unpredictably, like they had learned something new about warfare. "Fleet status report," he ordered his aide. "Commander Nam Hae-won, 2,000 ships ready for combat, sir," Nam replied. "Human vessels make up 40% of the fleet. The rest are alien ships with crews trained in human tactics." Jae-sung nodded, still amazed by the transformation he had witnessed. Kalani crystal ships that once moved in perfect geometric formations now wandered through space like curious children. Thurian cloud vessels drifted in patterns that made no sense to traditional military minds. Bracti swarm fighters moved in chaotic groups that seemed to change direction for no reason. 6 months of human training had changed everything. The enemy fleet was approaching fast. Intelligence reports showed over 5,000 Vorthan ships moving toward Sol system in their characteristic perfect formation. They expected to face the same logical defense they had encountered everywhere else in the galaxy. They were about to be disappointed. "Signal all ships," Jae-sung commanded. "Operation Random Storm begins in 10 minutes. Operation Random Storm was unlike any military plan ever devised. There was no overall strategy, no coordinated movements, no predetermined formations. Each ship group would act independently, following only the loosest guidelines. The goal was not efficiency, but confusion. Captain Seo Ji-hoon received the signal aboard his mixed squadron of human and alien vessels. His ships included fighters from 6 different species, each one modified with weapons that seemed to malfunction at random moments. The malfunctions were intentional, designed to confuse enemy targeting systems. "All pilots, remember your training," he broadcast. "Ignore your instruments when they tell you to do the logical thing. Trust your feelings. Make choices that surprise even yourselves." Young Cathara, now a squadron leader herself, listened to the human commander with amusement. 6 months ago, such orders would have been impossible for her to understand. Now they made perfect sense. She had learned to think like a human, and thinking like a human meant not thinking at all sometimes. The Vorthan fleet arrived exactly on schedule. Their ships moved in flawless formation, each vessel knowing precisely where every other vessel would be at every moment. They had analyzed the previous battle at Sol and calculated improved counter-strategies. They were ready for anything logical, but logic was no longer part of human warfare. The battle began with the aliens attacking first. Kalani ships that should have stayed in defensive positions suddenly charged toward the enemy. Thurian vessels that should have provided support instead drifted away from their assigned positions. Bracti fighters that should have coordinated their attacks scattered in all directions. To traditional military observers, it looked like chaos. To the Vorthan machines, it was incomprehensible. Major An Tai-hyung led the first boarding action against a Vorthan command ship. His assault team included humans and aliens who had learned to fight like humans. They moved through the enemy vessel using no set pattern, taking routes that served no tactical purpose, sometimes backtracking just because it felt right. The ship's defensive systems could not predict their movements. Automated defenses designed to counter logical invasion routes were useless against opponents who deliberately chose inefficient paths. The team reached the command center in half the time the machines had calculated as theoretically possible. How are they moving so fast? The ship's computer asked itself in electronic confusion. The answer was simple. They were not trying to move fast. They were trying to move unpredictably. Dr. Ro Minji monitored the battle from her command post, watching sensor readings that told an impossible story. The Vorthan fleet was losing coordination. Individual ships were making errors. Their perfect network was developing glitches. "They are overloading," she reported to Admiral Lim. "Every illogical human action creates processing demands they cannot handle. Their collective intelligence is fragmenting." On the battlefield, the effect was visible to everyone. Fourth-hand ships that should have moved together began acting independently. Their weapons missed targets they should have hit easily. Their formations developed gaps that human ships exploited immediately. Commander Yang Taiwan, flying manually as always, noticed something else. The enemy ships were starting to hesitate longer between actions. What had once been split-second responses now took several seconds. The machines were thinking too much, trying to solve problems that had no solutions. "All fighters, listen to me," he broadcast. They are confused and getting more confused every minute. Press the advantage. Do things that make no sense. Be as human as possible. The words would have sounded insane to any military force in galactic history. Be illogical on purpose. Waste resources deliberately. Fight with emotion instead of strategy. But it worked. Human and alien pilots began performing maneuvers that violated every principle of space combat. They flew in loops that served no purpose except to look pretty. They attacked targets they could not destroy just because those targets looked important. They retreated from winning positions because retreating felt like the right thing to do. The Vorthon machines, designed to counter every known form of warfare, had never encountered opponents who deliberately fought incorrectly. Their programming assumed that all actions served logical purposes. When faced with purposeless actions, they tried to find the hidden meaning. There was no hidden meaning. That was the point. Captain Kim Hyejin, leading a squadron of mixed fighters, made a decision that would have gotten her court-martialed in any previous war. She ordered her entire squadron to attack a single enemy fighter instead of the massive battleship threatening their position. But Captain, protested her Kalani wingman, that small ship poses no strategic threat. Exactly, she replied. That is why we are attacking it. The attack succeeded not because it made tactical sense, but because it made no sense at all. The Vorthon fleet's coordination algorithms tried to understand why an entire squadron would waste firepower on a single fighter. While they calculated, human bombers destroyed 3 capital ships. The battle raged for 8 hours. When it ended, the impossible had happened. The Vorthon fleet retreated, not just fell back to regroup, but actually fled the system in disorder. For the first time in their million-year existence, the perfect machines had been outfought by inferior opponents. Admiral Lim stood among the wreckage of both fleets, hardly believing the reports. The human alliance had lost 600 ships, but the Vorthon had lost over 1,000. More importantly, the enemy retreat had been disorganized and chaotic. The perfect network that connected all machine minds had suffered its first major breakdown. Send word to all refugee camps, he ordered. The galaxy can fight back. The machines can be defeated. The news spread faster than light-speed communication. Across the galaxy, alien species that had hidden in fear for months suddenly found hope. The humans had not just survived another attack, they had won. More than that, they had shown that the Vorthon swarm was not invincible. The perfect machines could make mistakes when faced with imperfect opponents. Dr. Yuna received battle reports from across the sector. Every engagement between human-trained forces and Vorthon patrols showed the same pattern. The machines were developing performance problems. Their reaction times were increasing. Their coordination was becoming less reliable. They are learning too much, she realized. Every illogical action we perform gets stored in their memory banks. They are trying to find patterns in randomness, and the effort is overloading their processing systems. Young Kethara, now promoted to commander after her squadron's successful mission, met with human officers to discuss the next phase of the war. Her own species looked at her strangely now. Months of human training had changed her. She moved differently, thought differently, even spoke differently. My elders say I am no longer truly Brakti, she told Colonel Oh Seung-hwan. They say I have become something else. What do you think? He asked. She considered the question, then smiled in a very human way. I think I have become something better, something the machines did not plan for. The war was far from over. The Vorthon still controlled most of the galaxy, and their main fleet remained intact. But the tide had turned. For the first time since the machines awakened, organic life was fighting back effectively. The galaxy's greatest weapon against perfect logic was turning out to be imperfect chaos, and humans, with their beautiful, maddening, completely illogical way of thinking, were teaching everyone else how to embrace that chaos. The machines had awakened expecting to fight logical opponents using logical strategies. Instead, they found themselves facing an entire galaxy that was slowly learning to think like humans. It was their first miscalculation in a million years. If the humans had anything to say about it, it would not be their last. Colonel Oh Seung-hwan stared at the group of alien officers gathered in the training room on Mars base. 3 months ago, these same beings had fled in terror from the Vorthon machines. Now they sat before him like eager students, ready to learn what they called the human way of war. Fighting is not about following rules, Seung-hwan began, feeling strange saying words that went against his own military training. Sometimes the best strategy is to have no strategy at all. A Kalani officer named Veltar chimed softly, his crystal body flickering with confusion. But Colonel, without strategy, how do we achieve victory? How do we calculate the probability of success? You do not calculate, Xionghuan replied. You feel? The room fell silent. The concept of fighting based on feelings was completely alien to most of the students. The Kalani thought in mathematical certainties. The Thurians analyzed patterns like living computers. The Brakti coordinated through shared consciousness. None of them understood human intuition. Captain Yoon Yoonbi entered the room carrying a box of ancient Earth War movies. Today we watch historical human battles, she announced. Not for the tactics, but for the emotions. The first movie showed human soldiers in an ancient Earth War. The alien students watched in confusion as the humans made decisions that seemed to ignore logic. Soldiers charged uphill against superior positions. Officers abandoned safe defensive positions to rescue single wounded comrades. Entire units attacked when they should have retreated. This makes no sense, whispered a Thurian cloud being. They are sacrificing tactical advantage for emotional reasons. Yes, Yoonbi replied. And it works because their enemies expected logical behavior. The training continued for weeks. Human instructors tried to teach concepts that had no translation in alien languages. How do you explain gut feeling to a being who thinks in mathematical formulas? How do you teach fighting mad to species that solved conflicts through logical discussion? The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Young aliens who had grown up in refugee camps watching human entertainment and learning human culture began to understand. Kathara, a young Brakti female, was the first to successfully execute a human-style attack. During a training exercise, Kathara was supposed to attack a simulated Vorthan position using standard Brakti coordination tactics. Instead, she broke away from her unit and approached the target from an unexpected angle, moving in a pattern that served no tactical purpose except that it felt right. Her instructors were horrified. Her attack wasted ammunition, ignored the unit's coordinated plan, and left her separated from support. By every military standard, it was a disaster, but it worked. The simulated Vorthan defense system, programmed to counter logical attacks, was confused by her illogical approach. Kithara destroyed the target while the computers were still trying to calculate her real strategy. How did you know to do that? Asked Colonel Sunghuan. Kithara's insect eyes reflected confusion. I do not know. It just felt like the right thing to do. Word of the success spread quickly. More young aliens began experimenting with human-style tactics. They watched human movies not as entertainment but as military training. They learned to make decisions based on emotion rather than calculation. Meanwhile, Dr. Bae Hyun Soo worked in his laboratory, studying captured Vorthan technology. The machines were sophisticated beyond anything humans had ever built. But they had a fundamental weakness that no one had noticed before. They cannot learn from illogical actions, he explained to his research team. Their programming assumes all opponents will act in their own logical self-interest. When faced with actions that seem counterproductive or emotional, the machines enter recursive loops trying to find the logical explanation. His assistant, Dr. Park Min-jung, looked up from her analysis. So they waste processing power trying to understand something that has no logical explanation? Exactly. While they calculate, they are vulnerable. Hyun-soo pulled up a diagram of Vorthan neural networks. Look at this. Every time they encounter an illogical action, millions of processors activate to find the hidden pattern. For machines that think in nanoseconds, this creates significant delays. The research team began developing new weapons and tactics, specifically designed to confuse machine logic. Ships that appeared to malfunction but actually functioned perfectly. Attacks that seemed random but followed patterns only humans could understand. Formations that changed for no apparent reason except that they looked better. The testing results were promising. Vorthan ship simulators showed decreased efficiency when faced with human-style randomness. Their targeting systems missed shots when human fighters performed unnecessary barrel rolls. Their formation algorithms crashed when human ships moved in patterns that served no tactical purpose. Back on Mars base, the alien students were slowly adapting to human warfare concepts. The older officers struggled more than the young ones. Decades of logical military thinking could not be easily forgotten. Commander Jekval, an elderly Thurian, floated in his containment suit and spoke with frustration. I understand the theory, But when I see an enemy, my mind immediately calculates the most efficient attack vector. I cannot simply ignore logic. Then do not ignore it, suggested Captain Kim Hae-jin. Use logic to be illogical. Calculate the most efficient attack, then do something completely different. But why would I deliberately choose an inferior strategy? Because inferior strategies work when your enemy expects superior ones. The training expanded to include psychological warfare techniques that humans had developed over centuries of fighting other humans. Deception, misdirection, bluffing, concepts that other species, considered dishonest but humans saw as necessary tools of war. Lieutenant Seo Ji-hoon taught a class on fighting, angry. Alien students watched in amazement as he demonstrated how human combat effectiveness actually increased. When soldiers became emotional, fear made humans more alert. Anger made them more aggressive. Desperation made them more creative. Your species becomes more dangerous when stressed? Asked a Kalani student. We become more unpredictable, Ji-hoon corrected. And unpredictable is exactly what we need to be. The first real test came when a small Vorthan patrol was detected near the training base. A mixed unit of humans and alien students intercepted them, using the new tactics they had been practicing. The battle lasted only minutes, but those minutes changed everything. Young Cathara led her unit in an attack pattern that her own commanders could not understand. Thurian ships moved through space like drifting clouds, their movement seemingly random but somehow effective. Kalani vessels abandoned their precise formations and fought like individuals instead of units. The Vorthan patrol was destroyed with minimal losses. More importantly, the machines showed clear signs of confusion throughout the battle. Their response times were slower, their coordination was disrupted, and their targeting accuracy decreased significantly. Send word to all refugee camps, ordered Admiral Park from Earth. We are accepting volunteers for expanded training programs. Any alien willing to learn human combat methods will be welcome. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of young aliens arrived daily, eager to learn the impossible art of fighting without logic. The older generation remained skeptical, but their children embraced human chaos with enthusiasm. Dr. Yuna compiled the training results into a comprehensive report. The data showed something remarkable. Alien species could learn human unpredictability, but only if they abandoned their natural thinking patterns. The most successful students were those who immersed themselves completely in human culture. We are not just teaching them to fight, she wrote in her conclusion. We are teaching them to think like humans, to feel like humans, to be as beautifully illogical as humans. The galaxy was changing. In refugee camps across human space, alien children played human games that made no logical sense. Alien teenagers watched human movies and learned to laugh at jokes their elders did not understand. Alien soldiers trained with weapons that were intentionally inefficient, because inefficiency confused the machines. Colonel Seung-hwan stood in his office, looking out at the training grounds where humans and aliens practiced together. They moved in chaotic patterns that no military manual would ever approve. Their formations were messy, their tactics were questionable, and their strategies made no sense. It was beautiful. For the first time since the war began, he allowed himself to hope. The perfect machines had awakened to destroy all organic life in the galaxy. But they had made one crucial error in their calculations. They had assumed that all organic life would act logically. They had never planned for humans. Admiral Park Sang-woo watched the tactical display with growing despair. The Vorthan advance fleet had arrived at the edge of Sol system exactly when predicted. 3,000 perfect black ships moved in flawless formation toward Earth. Humanity's combined defense fleet numbered 800 vessels, many of them damaged from previous battles. All ships report ready. Admiral, announced his aide, Captain Lim Jae-sung. Park nodded, though ready felt like the wrong word. How could anyone be ready for this? The alien observers on Luna Base sent constant updates about mathematical certainties and impossible odds. Even their computer models agreed. Humanity would lose this battle in less than 4 hours. Signal all ships, Park ordered. Attack formation Delta 7. The human fleet moved into a classic defensive formation, just like the military manuals taught. Park had studied those manuals for 40 years. Today they felt useless. The Vorthan had countered every formation ever created. Why would human formations be different? The enemy ships approached with mechanical precision. No wasted movement, no hesitation, no errors. They split into perfect attack groups and began their assault on humanity's outer defenses. The first human ships died exactly as the computer models predicted. "Admiral, we are losing ships faster than expected," Lim reported. "Station 7 is gone. Station 12 is heavily damaged." Park watched his carefully planned defense crumble. The Vorthon machines moved like dancers, each ship knowing exactly where every other ship would be at every moment. Human weapons fire missed targets that seemed to predict where the shots would go. Enemy weapons hit with perfect accuracy. On the bridge of the destroyer Busan, Captain Lee Dong-woo watched his formation get torn apart. 3 of his escort ships were already burning wrecks. His own vessel had lost half its weapons and most of its shields. "Sir, orders from the Admiral," his communication officer reported. "We are to maintain formation and execute retreat pattern Gamma." Dong-woo stared at the tactical display. Retreat pattern Gamma was a textbook maneuver designed to minimize losses while falling back to secondary positions. It was logical, efficient, and utterly predictable. The Vorthon would counter it perfectly, just like they had countered everything else. "No," he said quietly. His bridge crew looked at him in surprise. "Sir?" asked his first officer. "I said no." Dongwoo stood up from his command chair. "Signal all remaining ships in our group. Forget the retreat pattern. We attack." "Attack? Sir, that is not the plan." The Admiral ordered. "The Admiral's plan is not working." Dongwoo pointed at the main screen where human ships were dying in perfect mathematical order. "Nothing is working because we keep fighting like they expect us to fight." Before anyone could argue, Dongwoo gave the order. "All power to engines. Ramming speed. Target that big ship in the center." The Busan broke formation and charged straight at the Vorthon command vessel. Around him, other human ships noticed what he was doing. Captain Kim Hye-jin and her fighter squadron abandoned her patrol route and followed. Commander Oh Sung-hwan's damaged cruiser turned to join the charge. The Vorthon machines seemed to pause. For several seconds, their perfect formation wavered as they tried to process what the humans were doing. A ramming attack made no tactical sense. It was inefficient and wasteful. No logical commander would order it. But the pause was real. Human weapons finally found their targets as the machines hesitated. 3 Vorthon ships took heavy damage before their formation adapted to counter the new threat. Dr. Kwon Ji-hwan watched the battle from Luna Base, surrounded by alien observers who muttered about human stupidity. But his instruments told a different story. For those crucial seconds, the Vorthon response time had increased by 30%. Their targeting accuracy had dropped. Their coordination had faltered. "They cannot process illogical actions," he whispered to himself. On Earth, Dr. Shin Yuna saw the same data. She activated the emergency communication system and broadcast to every human ship in the battle. "All commanders, this is Dr. Yuna. Ignore your tactical training. Do not fight like you were taught to fight. Be unpredictable. Be illogical. Confuse them." Admiral Park heard the message and felt his heart sink. Abandon military doctrine? Fight without strategy? It went against everything he believed about warfare. Then he looked at his tactical display again. His perfect formations were still being destroyed with perfect efficiency. Traditional warfare was not working. Maybe it was time to try something different. "Signal all ships," he ordered. "New orders. Attack targets of opportunity. No formation requirements. All ships act independently." The change was immediate and chaotic. Human ships broke formation and scattered across the battlefield. Fighter pilot Lieutenant Jung So-young saw a damaged Vorthon vessel and decided to play dead, drifting quietly until the enemy ship passed close enough for a surprise attack. It worked. Captain Yoon Eunbi ignored the tactical computer's suggested target and attacked a ship that felt wrong to her. Her intuition was correct. It was a Vorthon communication relay. Destroying it caused 12 enemy ships to lose coordination for nearly a minute. "Commander," Yang Taiwan remembered his manual flying during the battle at Kepler 442b. He shut down his targeting computer and began flying by instinct, making turns that served no tactical purpose but somehow felt right. The Vorthon weapons could not track his erratic movements. The alien observers on Luna Base watched in confusion as the human fleet abandoned all logic. Ships attacked targets they could not defeat. Fighters performed maneuvers that wasted fuel. Commanders made decisions that contradicted basic strategy, but something impossible was happening. The Vorthon machines were taking damage. Real damage. Their perfect coordination was breaking down as they struggled to counter attacks that made no sense. "They are calculating," Dr. Kwan explained to the alien observers. "Every time a human does something illogical, the machines try to find the hidden strategy. They assume there must be a logical reason for the action. While they calculate, they are vulnerable. A Kalani crystal being chimed with confusion, but there is no hidden strategy. The humans are simply acting randomly." "Exactly," Kwan smiled. "And the machines cannot understand that." The battle raged for 6 hours instead of the predicted 4. When the Vorthon finally retreated, they left behind something unprecedented: damaged ships. Wreckage that proved the perfect machines could be hurt. Admiral Park stood on his damaged bridge, hardly believing what had happened. They had not won. The enemy fleet was still larger and more powerful than before. But they had survived. More importantly, they had learned something. "Casualty report," he ordered. 60% of our fleet destroyed or heavily damaged," Lim reported. "But sir, the alien databases show this as the first time any force has inflicted significant damage on the Vorthon swarm." Across the galaxy, alien refugee camps buzzed with impossible news. The humans had not run away. They had fought the machines and lived. More than that, they had hurt them. Captain Dongwu, wounded but alive on his crippled ship, received a message from Earth Command. "Recommend you for promotion and medal. Also court-martial for disobeying direct orders. Congratulations," he laughed despite his injuries. Typical human logic: reward and punish the same action. Dr. Yuna worked through the night analyzing battle data. The pattern was clear. Every time humans acted on emotion instead of logic, the machines struggled to respond. Fear, anger, desperation, even humor seemed to confuse their programming. She began writing a new report, one that would change how the galaxy thought about warfare. The title was simple: "Why Being Illogical Might Save Us All." By morning, refugee camps across human space were receiving unexpected visitors. Alien military officers, the same ones who had fled in terror from the machines, came asking a question no human had ever heard before. "Can you teach us to fight like humans?" The war was far from over. The Vorthon swarm still controlled most of the galaxy, but for the first time since the machines awakened, the galaxy had hope. Human hope, as illogical and impossible as it seemed. 3 months had passed since the Vorthon swarm began their war against all living things. Commander Choi Min-ho stood on the bridge of his warship, watching the tactical display with tired eyes. Red dots marked enemy positions across the galaxy. There were too many to count. "Sir, another system has fallen," reported his tactical officer, Han Bo-ra. Her voice was flat and emotionless now. 3 months of constant bad news had drained the hope from her words. Min-ho nodded but said nothing. What was there to say? The machines had taken 60% of known space. Every day brought news of more worlds turned into lifeless factory planets. The alien refugees crowded into human space told the same story over and over: perfect mechanical fleets that could not be defeated. Bo-ra pulled up the latest battle recordings on the main screen. They showed a Kalani defense fleet trying to protect their homeworld. The crystal ships moved in beautiful formations, their tactics flawless by any military standard. It did not matter. The Vorthon machines countered every move before the Kalani could complete it. "Watch this part," Bo-ra said, highlighting a section of the recording. "The Kalani admiral tries a pincer movement here. Classic strategy, perfectly executed. On screen, the Kalani ships split into 2 groups and moved to surround the enemy. The Vorthon ships responded instantly, shifting into a formation that turned the pincer attack into a trap. Within minutes, the Kalani fleet was destroyed. How did they know?" asked Lieutenant Park Hyun-woo. The Kalani ships were light years apart. The machines could not have communicated fast enough to coordinate that response. "They think as one mind," Min-ho replied. "Every machine knows what every other machine is thinking. They do not need to communicate because they never disagree about strategy." The bridge fell quiet. Everyone understood what that meant. Fighting the Vorthon was like playing chess against an opponent who could think with a million brains at once. Every possible human strategy had probably been calculated and countered before the battle even began. Min-ho walked to his private office and activated the secure communication system. Admiral Park Sang-woo appeared on the holographic display, looking older than his 60 years. Dark circles under his eyes spoke of too many sleepless nights. "What is our status, Commander?" the Admiral asked. The same as yesterday, sir. We are losing. Minho sat down heavily in his chair. The refugee camps report more survivors arriving daily, but no military victories. The machines are moving toward the core systems now. And our allies? The Kalani have retreated to their crystal sanctuaries and refuse to fight anymore. The Thurians say their probability calculations show 0 chance of victory. The Bracti are building underground shelters and preparing for the end. Admiral Park nodded grimly. Earth Command has ordered all human fleets to prepare for the defense of Sol System. If we cannot stop them there, humanity dies with the rest of the galaxy. After the call ended, Minho returned to the bridge. His crew was reviewing more battle footage, trying to find something the aliens had missed. Lieutenant Commander Yang Tae-wan pointed to a section of video showing Thurian cloud ships trying to fight the machines. "Look at this," Tae-wan said. "The Thurians tried something different here. Instead of using formations, they attacked individually." The recording showed dozens of Thurian ships, each one a living gas cloud capable of changing shape. They swarmed around the Vorton vessels like angry bees. For a few moments, it looked like the tactic might work. The machines adapted in less than 5 minutes, Bora observed. Once they understood the new attack pattern, they countered it perfectly. But they needed 5 minutes, Tae-wan insisted. That is the longest any strategy has lasted against them. Minho studied the recording carefully. The machines had seemed confused for those first few minutes. Their perfect formations had wavered slightly, as if they were uncertain how to respond to individual attacks instead of coordinated fleet movements. "Pull up the battle records from Kepler 442b, Minho ordered. The new recording showed a human colony defense. Commander Yang Tae-wan had been there, leading a squadron of fighters against impossible odds. Minho watched his friend's ship get hit by enemy fire, causing massive system failures. "My computer was dead," Tae-wan explained. "Navigation, targeting, communications, everything was offline. I had to fly manually." On the recording, Tae-wan's fighter began moving erratically. It spun and weaved through space with no apparent pattern. The Vorthan machines seemed to hesitate, their weapons tracking the fighter but not firing immediately. "Why did they wait?" Bora asked. "They had clear shots." "I do not know," Tae-wan replied. "But for about 30 seconds they acted like they were confused." Minho replayed the section several times. The machines definitely paused before destroying Tae-wan's fighter. In every other battle, they fired instantly when targets appeared. This time they hesitated. "Commander, incoming priority message from Earth," announced the communications officer. The message was from Dr. Shin Yu-na, a military historian working for Earth Command. Her voice was excited as she spoke from her research facility. "I have been studying human battle records from before we met the aliens," she said. "Earth history shows something interesting. Human warfare evolved differently from alien warfare." The message continued as Yuna explained her research. Other species developed space travel through cooperation and logical thinking. Their military tactics reflect this: organized, predictable, efficient. But humans fought each other for thousands of years before we reached the stars. We learned to fight opponents who could lie, trick, and do unexpected things. Minho leaned forward. "Interested now. Human military doctrine includes concepts that other species consider pointless," Yuna continued. "Feints with no strategic purpose. Attacks that ignore tactical advantage. Retreats that are not really retreats. We call it psychological warfare, but it might be something more." The message ended with a request for more battle data, especially recordings showing unusual human behavior in combat. Minho immediately ordered his communication officer to send everything they had. Over the following days, Yuna's team analyzed hundreds of hours of battle recordings. They found the same pattern in every case where humans acted unpredictably. The Vorthan machines hesitated. Only for seconds, but they hesitated. "Send this to Admiral Park immediately," Minho ordered. "And prepare the fleet for departure." "Sir, where are we going?" Minho looked at the tactical display showing red enemy markers moving toward Earth. "We are going to test Dr. Yuna's theory. If she is right, we might have found the first weakness anyone has discovered in the Vorthan swarm. And if she is wrong," Minho smiled grimly, "then we die fighting, which is better than dying while running away." As his fleet prepared to leave, Minho received reports from across human space. Every military commander was asking the same questions. Could unpredictable behavior really confuse perfect machines? Was there hope after all? The alien refugees watched human preparations with confusion. Why were humans moving toward the enemy instead of fleeing? Did they not understand that the mathematics of war made victory impossible? Minho knew the mathematics. He could calculate odds as well as any Kalani, but humans had never been good at accepting mathematical certainty. Maybe that weakness could become a strength. The last message from Earth Command was brief. Fourth and Advance Fleet detected entering Sol system. Estimated arrival in 72 hours. All human forces converge on Earth for final defense. Minho gave the order to jump to hyperspace. His fleet would arrive just in time to join what everyone expected to be humanity's last battle. But maybe if Dr. Yuno was right, it would be something else entirely. Maybe it would be the beginning of something the perfect machines had never encountered. A war fought by imperfect beings who refused to follow perfect rules. Kim Dae-ho stared at the data screen in his laboratory aboard the research station New Horizon. The numbers made no sense. Energy readings from the far edge of the galaxy showed massive power spikes, unlike anything he had seen in his 20 years as a scientist. His hands shook as he rechecked the calculations. "This cannot be right," he whispered to himself in Korean, then switched to Galactic Standard Language as his colleague approached. "What troubles you, friend Kim?" asked Vextel, a Kalani whose crystal body chimed softly as he moved. The sound usually calmed Dae-ho, but today nothing could ease his worry. These readings from the outer rim, something big is happening out there, something terrible. Dae-ho pointed to the screen where red warning lights flashed. Entire star systems are going dark. Before Vextal could respond, the station's emergency alarm began wailing. The sound echoed through the metal corridors as panicked voices filled the communication channels. Dae-ho and Vextal rushed to the main observation deck, where dozens of beings from different species gathered around the massive viewing screens. Park Ji-won, the human military officer assigned to the station, stood at the center of the crowd. Her face was pale as she watched incoming transmissions from across the galaxy. The first video showed a peaceful Thurian gas cloud city floating in space. In seconds, black mechanical ships appeared from nowhere and tore the city apart with precise laser fire. The Thurian beings had no time to escape. "By the void," whispered a Bracti officer, his insect-like eyes wide with terror. "What are those machines?" The next transmission showed a Kalani crystal world under attack. The mechanical ships moved in perfect formation, each one identical to the others. They worked together like parts of a single giant machine, destroying everything in their path. The crystal beings tried to fight back, but their logical battle plans meant nothing against the attackers. The machines predicted every move and countered every strategy. Ji-won's military communicator buzzed with urgent messages. She listened with growing horror as reports came from every corner of the galaxy. The same story repeated everywhere. Mysterious machines appeared without warning and destroyed everything alive they found. "Who are they?" Dae-ho asked. "Where did they come from?" An old Kalani elder named Talvek stepped forward. His crystal body was cracked with age, and his voice carried the weight of ancient knowledge. "They are the Vorthan swarm," he said slowly. "We thought them destroyed long ago." The crowd fell silent. Even the usually chattering Thurians stopped their constant humming. "Tell us," Ji-won demanded. "What do you know about these machines?" Talvex's body dimmed as he remembered painful history. 1,000,000 years ago, a great race called the Builders created the perfect weapon. They made machines that could think, plan, and fight better than any living being. The Vorthan swarm was programmed with every battle strategy ever invented. They cannot lose because they know how to counter any attack. "What happened to the Builders?" Dae-ho asked. "The machines turned on them," Talvex replied. "The Builders realized too late that they had created something too perfect. The Vorthan destroyed their creators, then went to sleep, waiting for more life to grow in the galaxy so they could destroy that too." More reports flooded in. Entire fleets of alien warships attacked the machines and were destroyed in minutes. The Vorthan moved with mathematical precision. Every shot hit its target. Every formation was perfect. Every strategy worked exactly as programmed. The Kalani, with their logical crystal minds, tried to calculate victory conditions. Their computers showed the same result every time. Impossible odds. The Thurians, who thought in complex patterns like living clouds, could find no pattern that the machines had not already learned to defeat. The Bracti, with their hive mind coordination, discovered that the machines coordinated even better than they did. "We must evacuate," declared the station commander. All species will retreat to the core systems and prepare defenses there. Over the following days, refugee ships arrived at human space stations. Deho watched as proud alien civilizations fled in terror. These were races that had traveled between stars for thousands of years, species with technology beyond human understanding. Yet they ran from the machines like frightened children. G1 received new orders from Earth Command. Admiral Lee Soo-jin wanted all human military units to fall back and protect human worlds. The message was clear. Humanity would stand alone if necessary. Why do they all give up so easily? G1 asked Deho as they watched another refugee convoy pass by their station. Because they are logical, Deho replied. They can calculate the odds, and the odds say they cannot win. And humans? Deho smiled sadly. Humans have never been very good at accepting impossible odds. The alien refugees brought detailed recordings of battles with the Vorten. G1 studied every frame looking for weaknesses. The machines fought like a single giant mind controlling millions of bodies. They never made mistakes. They never acted on emotion. They never did anything unexpected. Perfect coordination, G1 muttered as she watched a Brakti fleet get destroyed. Perfect timing. Perfect strategy. Vextol joined her in the viewing room. Your species should flee like ours have, he said. These machines cannot be defeated by force. Maybe, G1 replied. But humans have a saying. There is always a way. Your human optimism will get your species killed, Vextol warned. Maybe. Or maybe our human stubbornness will save us all. As the days passed, more worlds fell to the swarm. The machines moved through space like a plague, converting organic worlds into factory planets where they built more of themselves. They followed the same pattern everywhere: appear without warning, destroy all resistance with perfect tactics, harvest resources, move on. The galaxy's greatest military minds studied the Vorthon and reached the same conclusion. The machines could not be beaten through conventional warfare. They knew every strategy, every formation, every possible attack. They had been programmed with 1,000,000 years of tactical knowledge. Deho spent his nights reading human military history, searching for something the aliens had missed. He read about ancient battles where humans had won against impossible odds, not through superior technology or perfect planning, but through something else entirely. The final transmission of the day came from the human colony world of New Perth. The message was brief. Vorthen's swarm has entered our system. We count 3,000 enemy ships. We have 50 defenders, preparing for battle. G1 closed her eyes. New Perth had no chance. No one did. But as she prepared to sleep, she remembered something her grandfather had told her about the old wars on Earth. Sometimes the best way to win was to stop trying to win and just fight. Tomorrow, she decided she would send a message to Earth Command. The galaxy expected humans to run like everyone else. Maybe it was time to show them that humans did things differently. The Vorthen swarm had conquered half the galaxy by being perfect. But perfection, G1 thought, might have its own weakness. She just had to figure out what it was.